So, today we shall start the fourth book among the English series of Adhyatma Prakasha Karyalaya publication, Hole Narsipura, Karnataka, India. This is Avasthatraya or the unique method of Vedanta, written by Shri Sachidanandendra Saraswati Swamiji, Hole Narsipura, Karnataka, India. For Kalyana magazine of Gita Press initially, before he took sannyasa. Avasthatraya or the unique method of Vedanta. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Dr. Krishnamurti Shastri, Dambe Punacha, Karnataka, India. All the Vedantic schools are agreed that the system of Vedanta, as found in the principal Upanishads and elaborated by Badarayana in his famous sutras, Brahma Sutras, attaches very great importance to the examination of the three avasthas or conditions of life called waking, dream, and dreamless sleep or deep sleep. There is divergence of opinion, however, regarding the purpose which this examination is intended to serve the system. With profound respect to all acharyas who no doubt have equal claim on us as having ministered to the needs of countless souls, I propose to show in these pages what a veritable magician's wand this method of inquiry has proved in the hands of that matchless thinker, Sri Shankaracharya. For where all the other commentators saw no more than a confirmation of man's inherent weakness and helplessness as justifying his eternal dependence on a scripture revealed God by whose grace alone he could hope to attain a post mortem salvation. This great apostle of Vedic monism alone visioned the most comprehensive method of devisable to demonstrate scientifically the essential identity of the human soul with Brahman or absolute existence, consciousness, and bliss. It is neither possible nor desirable that chapter and verse should be quoted for each and every one of the statements made here in order to convince the reader that Shankara actually regarded the Avasthaik method as possessing such paramount importance for Vedanta as has been indicated above. It will be enough to adduce two typical passages extracted from his Bhashya on the Mandukya Upanishad with Gaudapada Karika, the smallest of the 10 principal Upanishads, which exclusively treats of the avasthas. A careful reader will not miss the significant remark with which Shankara introduces the work. Vedantartha Sara Sangraha Bhutamidam Prakarana Chatushtayam. This is a summary of essence of all Vedantic teaching. Again, in introducing the Avasthaik method set forth by Gaudapada in his explanatory Karikas on Mandukya, the Acharya observes, एवं अन्योन्य विरुद्धत्वात् संसार कारणानि रागद्वेषास्पदानि प्रावादुकाम दर्शनानि अतो मिथ्यादर्शनानि तानि इति तद्युक्तिभिरेव दर्शयित्वा चतुष्कोटिवर्जितत्वात् दोष अनास्पदं स्वभावशान्तम् अद्वैतदर्शनम् एव सम्यक् दर्शनमित्युपसंहृतम्. अथ इदानीं स्वप्रक्रियादर्शनार्थ आरम्भः. The views of different schools contradict one another and lead to samsara, transmigration as engendering the evils of love and hate. Hence, they are all misconceived. Having shown this through their own arguments, it has been concluded that the Advaita, free from the fourfold defects already mentioned as well as from the evils of love and hate, naturally conduces to peace and is therefore the only right view. And now this section is begun in order to set forth the peculiar method of this philosophy. It is of more practical interest to inquire about the special features of the method which render it impossible to be superseded or stultified by any other. In the first place, it is the only method which considers life in all its aspects. Waking, dream, and sleep exhaust all independent manifestations of reality. And as Shankara observes, there is nothing beyond these three to be known, for all the postulates of different schools are comprehended in these. एतद्व्यतिरेकेण ज्ञेय अनुपपत्तेः सर्वप्रावादुककल्पितवस्तु वस्तुनः अत्रैव अंतर्भावात्. And in the second place, any metaphysical conclusion based on the coordination of experiences of the three avasthas cannot possibly be stultified for the simple reason that while stultification can happen only in time, such as conclusion will have taken us to heights where time is conspicuous by its absence. In explanation of the second statement made above, it will be useful to observe that sitting in judgment over the avasthas really means taking an attitude of self dissociation from the objectification of all phenomena whatsoever. My waking condition, for instance, includes on this view the whole universe of my percepts and concepts, the entire universe containing all that I perceive, all that I can infer or imagine or conceive in that state. Not merely men, animals, and things, suns, moons, and stars, angels, devils, and other spirits, or even imaginary persons, creatures, and things inhabiting worlds, even conceived in poetry or fiction, or creations of frenzied brains, but also my own body, mind, intellect, and ego as well. In one sleep, I include all the subjective and the objective elements of my waking and stand, as it were, an unaffected witness of this vast panorama. It must not be forgotten that waking time, past, present, and future, is wholly within this broad embrace of waking. So is space with its distinctions of here and there, up and down. The disposition of the mind herein depicted may be very difficult for one to adopt, but granted the willingness to take a detached view of things and the capacity to reflect, one cannot escape the conclusion that the witness of the waking condition is, in fact, the witness of all that is perceivable or conceivable there, of all the worlds with which one commences in actual experience or imagination there. I may refer the reader interested in this study to Shankara's commentary on Mandukya, where Atman is the waking state. Atman in the waking state is described as Saptangaha, consisting of seven organs. Shankara shows there how the Atman in waking is as the witnessing consciousness, identical with all the embodied selves. Sarvapindatma Ananyatvat. If we now turn to a consideration of the dream state and assume that same attitude of dissociation, we are struck with the marvelously identical nature of the two conditions. No doubt, from the monobasic view, which induces us to identify ourselves With the little ego of waking alone, we are persuaded that the waking world is common to a number of souls in contrast with the dreams, which are exclusively our own. But the moment we incline to the tribasic view of Vedanta, the moment we wish to occupy a position from where we can examine all the three states without any partiality for either the waking ego or the dreaming ego, the science changes entirely. The dream condition now presents an exact replica of waking, so much so that we are at a loss to fix up any marks of identity by which recognize waking as such. For in dream, we are confronted with all the contexts, both subjective and objective, set in an exactly similar framework of time, space, and causation. Compare the Mandukya mantras, which apply the same epithets Saptangaha and Ekonavimshati Mukhaha to both the states. On waking, of course, we do detect that dreams are only subjective and temporary, and that the phenomena there are neither coherent nor governed by irreversible laws of time or causation. But as this is only from a different thought position where we identify ourselves with the waking ego, the conclusion drawn from the impartial view described above remains unaffected. An important corollary from the identical nature of dream and waking thus established is that the witnessing Atman, who is the sole warranty for this identification, has to be necessarily regarded as transcending the limitations of both the subjective and the objective aspects of either state. A verse in the Kathopanishad declares this profound truth thus: Swapnantam jagaritantam chobhau yena anupashyati mahantam vibumatmanam matvadhiro nashochati. That great all pervading one through whom one is enabled to see both dream and waking, realizing him as the Atman, the wise man, grieves no more. Time, space, and causality appropriate to each state are found in either, and so are the subjective and the objective parts of the world peculiar to each state. Now, while as the ego in each state, we are undoubtedly subject to the joys and sorrows of the particular world, it is not difficult to see that as the witnessing Atman who spans both the states, we transcend both and are above all the petty joys and cares of the passing moods. The Brihadaranyaka gives a striking illustration of this when it compares Atman to a mighty fish which swims from bank to bank of a river unaffected by the gushing stream which it cuts across. So, we are now in a position to assert that our real self or Atman, witness of dream and waking, knows no limitation of time, space, or causation. It is not delimited by a second which can claim the same degree of reality. For none of the entities to be found either in dream or waking can get out of the clutches of time or space restricted to that particular sphere, nor can any one of the things in either state pass on to the other, maintaining its self identity like Atman. Besides, neither of the states can coexist with the other or continue to keep company with the Atman, whereas our Atman can with equal ease manage to be alongside of either as long as it lasts. So far, then we see that Atman, as the witnessing consciousness of the two states, enjoys absolute independence. But can he cut off all connection with these states? Can he continue to exist by his own right, regardless of either manifestation or the complete effacements of both? The one answer to this question is deep sleep, the state which defies all analysis from the monobasic view but yields its secrets without reserve to the all comprising method of inquiry we have been describing. So, the let us continue in the next session. Avasthatraya Sri Sri Sachidanandana Saraswati Swamiji. So, first session ends today now of this chapter of this subject or topic. In the next session, let us continue. Hare Rama. Shri Sachidananda Arpitamastu. Om Tat Sat.